What exactly did you do about Prince Andrew? The question hit the room before anyone was ready for it. Todd Blanche, 4 weeks into his tenure as the United States Attorney General, opened his mouth and then closed it. 3 seconds passed, 3 full seconds of absolute silence on national television. His hands folded on the witness table, pressed against each other just slightly harder. No words came, just the sound of cameras clicking and a room holding its breath. This was the moment Van Hollen had been building toward for weeks. Not the affidavit, not the fund, not the January 6th pardons. All of that was coming, but it was all secondary. Because the question that had no answer, the question that had never had an answer across multiple administrations, multiple FBI directors, multiple sworn testimonies claiming full transparency, was the one that opened the hearing. Prince Andrew, the name in the files, the name with the civil settlement, the name connected to Epstein's network by court record, by victim testimony, by documented relationship. The name that, despite all of that, had never produced a single formal action from the United States Department of Justice. Van Hollen wasn't asking a political question. He was asking a prosecutorial one, and Blanche had no answer. Here is the part that should have ended careers years ago. The FBI's own agents, not journalists, not political operatives, not opposition researchers, sat across from Epstein's network and recorded sworn victim statements. Form 302 documents. The Bureau's official internal record of what victims said in their own words under federal interview conditions. Those documents named individuals by title, by role, by exactly what they did and when they did it. One of those individuals was a member of the British royal family, not rumored, not implied, named, in the FBI's own files. Across multiple victim statements, across documented meetings and documented travel that federal investigators had already verified. And then, nothing. No charge, no referral, no public declination, no explanation of any kind to the American public about why evidence collected by their own law enforcement agents in their own files against a named royal figure had produced zero formal outcome. Multiple administrations came and went. Each one told Congress they had reviewed everything thoroughly. Each one implied their department had acted appropriately. The name stayed buried, the files stayed sealed, and the institution moved on. There is something else the public was never told. Internal communications later surfaced showing that FBI agents working the case had formally requested cooperation from British authorities, not once, but 3 times. 3 separate requests, 3 separate administrations. The British government declined each time. And here is the part that should stop you cold. Senior DOJ officials had the legal authority to pursue the matter independently of British cooperation. They chose not to. No written explanation exists in any public record. No declination memo was ever filed. The decision to stop was made verbally, at a level high enough that it left no paper trail. That was what Van Hollen carried into the hearing room that April morning. Not a theory. A timeline. Blanche had walked in confident. This was a man who had defended Donald Trump in federal court, who had navigated the most politically charged legal proceedings in modern American history. His preparation team had briefed him thoroughly. Budget questions, civil liberties, jurisdictional matters, standard oversight territory. No one had told him Van Hollen was going to open with Prince Andrew. He began with the answer he had for everything. The department follows the facts wherever they lead. He spoke about respecting ongoing processes, about international jurisdictional complexity, about not commenting on matters under review. The words came out in the right order. They had the right cadence. They sounded like answers. Van Hollen let him finish, every word, full runway. Then Van Hollen looked up from his notes. Director Comey's FBI reviewed those materials. Director Wray's FBI reviewed those materials. Your predecessor reviewed those materials. Every one of them told this committee they had been thorough. And yet, the name that appears in sworn victim testimony, connected to documented meetings, documented travel, documented association, has never produced a single formal outcome from this department. Not a charge, not a referral, not even a public declination. So I want to ask you directly, Mr. Attorney General, when you say the department reviewed everything, what exactly happened when they reached that name? The temperature in the room dropped. Blanche's eyes moved. Not to his notes, not to the legal team behind him. Somewhere off to the side, scanning for a response that no briefing book had prepared. He spoke about ongoing sensitivities, about not prejudging outcomes, about the difference between a name appearing in documentation and a name being the subject of actionable evidence. Van Hollen nodded slowly. He had heard this language before. Different officials, different hearings, same evasion architecture. "So, are you saying the department reviewed everything?" he said, his voice dropping to a near quiet that forced every person in that room to lean in, "and still chose to do nothing?" 11 seconds of silence followed, 11 seconds that felt like a verdict being read. But here is what made that silence even more devastating. Because Van Hollen wasn't operating on theory alone. He reached into the folder and produced a sworn affidavit from the Hernando County Sheriff's Office in Florida, signed under penalty of perjury by a law enforcement officer. And what it described was the clearest illustration yet of exactly how this system operates, who it protects, and how it does it. The affidavit detailed a man named Andrew, pardoned by the president for his role in the January 6th attack on the Capitol, then charged with deeply disturbing conduct toward vulnerable individuals under his care. According to the sworn document, this man had told one of his victims that since he had been pardoned and was being awarded $10 million as a result of being a January 6th-er, he would be putting that victim in his will to take any money left over. The tactic the officer wrote was believed to be used to prevent the victim from exposing what had been done to them: a pardoned attacker, a promised payout, a silenced victim, all of it documented by a sheriff's deputy, all of it signed under penalty of perjury. Van Hollen looked directly at Blanche. "And you're telling me you don't know about all these people who have been signaled by the President of the United States that they're going to get payments?" Blanche's jaw tightened. He called the affidavit disgusting. He called it horrible. But he could not say the individual would be ineligible. He retreated to the only position he had left. The fund hadn't been formally established yet. Technically, no commitment could have been made. Van Hollen set the affidavit down carefully. "You are playing word games." Blanche fired back that words matter, that he should be quoted accurately. The composure he had maintained through the opening exchange was fracturing now. A stiffness in the jaw, the hands that had been folded pressing flat against the table, a slight redness creeping above his collar. Van Hollen said he had the transcript, and then came the line that reframed the entire hearing. Because this is what Van Hollen understood that Blanche either didn't or pretended not to. The Florida affidavit and the Prince Andrew files were not two separate problems. They were the same problem wearing different clothes. On Prince Andrew, no formal action, no public declination, no explanation. On the pardoned rioter, technicalities about fund timing. Different cases, different justifications, same architecture, the powerful figure protected, the vulnerable individual left with a signed document and no recourse. Van Hollen asked whether Blanche would agree to have a federal judge sign off on the anti-weaponization fund before it proceeded. The same oversight mechanism Blanche himself had repeatedly cited in the comparable case he kept referencing. Blanche said there was no mechanism for that. Van Hollen pointed out the comparable case had exactly that mechanism. Blanche explained the case had been dismissed the night before because the department had moved to create this fund. Van Hollen absorbed this. He looked at Blanche for a long moment. "You are acting today like the president's personal attorney. You have a banner of his face hanging over the Department of Justice, and you and everybody else walks under it." Blanche straightened. He was the acting attorney general. The fact that he had previously been Trump's personal lawyer was simply a fact. That didn't change his role. The distinction seemed to satisfy Blanche. It satisfied no one else in that room. In the hours that followed, it was not the affidavit that dominated coverage. It was the 11 seconds. That gap in the record, a visible, documented, time-stamped, from a sitting attorney general asked to account for what the department had done with the most prominent, protected name in the Epstein files. Former federal prosecutors noted what Blanche had not said. He had not claimed the matter was classified. He had not invoked executive privilege. He had not placed the question outside his authority. He had simply not answered. And in the legal architecture of congressional testimony, a non-answer from the nation's top law enforcement official is itself a document. It goes in the record, it stays there. Van Hollen had entered the hearing with a folder. He left, having placed on the record something 4 years of hearings, 2 administrations, and multiple FBI directors had managed to avoid. The direct, time-stamped, nationally televised confrontation of a sitting official over the one name the institution had consistently refused to formally address. The through line was not coincidence, it was the argument. Powerful figures, vulnerable individuals, institutional silence, a department that keeps finding reasons, different reasons, appropriate sounding reasons, technically defensible reasons, not to act. Van Hollen sat down. He had no further questions. The banner of the president's face hangs over the Department of Justice. Everybody walks under it, and until someone inside that building is willing to walk the other direction, towards the unanswered file, toward the name that produces 11 seconds of silence, toward the sworn testimony that never translated into a single formal outcome. The answer remains the same: not classified, not privileged, not outside jurisdiction, just nothing. So now, we want to hear from you. Was the DOJ's silence on Prince Andrew a genuine legal conclusion, or something no briefing book will ever document? Todd Blanche replaced Pam Bondi at the top of the Department of Justice. Bondi looked the other way. Will Blanche do the same? And the question underneath all of it, is the DOJ genuinely not strong enough to reach that name, or is it simply unwilling? Because after everything we just watched, after 11 seconds of silence from America's top law enforcement official, is there even a difference? Drop your answer below, because accountability doesn't end when a senator's time expires.